This video is brought to you by NCIX.com. Great technology, selection, and service.
Gaming mice can be extremely expensive, with some flagship mice ranging up to nearly $60. But can you get a good gaming mouse on the cheap? We set off to find out. Welcome to the Hardware Canucks roundup of gaming mice under $25. This is the first of a couple of mice roundups we're going to be doing, starting with the $25 and lower price point, and then moving upwards. The winner of each price range will move up to compete in the next tier, with individual winners for each price range, and finally we'll crown an overall winner. Now we have to say that selecting any type of peripheral boils down to personal choice, rather than one being better than another. For example, someone who holds their mouse in a palm grip could absolutely hate mice that target claw grippers, and vice versa. In the best case scenario, you'll be able to get out to a store and try a few options before making a decision. With that being said, this roundup will focus on a combination of simple, repeatable tests that replicate gaming situations and my subjective opinion on each mouse. Let's get started with the competitors, as we're covering 9 mice today. We have the Cougar 200M, Gigabyte M6900, Thermaltake Talon Blue, Azio EX01, and GM2400. There's also Logitech's G100s, Gamdias Demeter, the Zalman M401R, and the Rosewill Jet. Because there are so many mice to examine, it'll take some time, so here are the time codes on screen for each placing. To assess these, we'll be covering 4 main categories: price, design, build and comfort, features and customization, and finally sensor performance. So we'll start with the Rosewill Jet, available for $20 on Newegg. The Jet has a primarily plastic build, with a soft touch finish on top which feels okay, and textured plastic on the sides. The build's nothing exceptional, it doesn't feel great, and the materials are cheaper than most of the other mice in this roundup. The mouse has some sensor rattle, it's not really loud, but if you shake the mouse it is noticeable, which is a shame. One of the advantages the mouse does have is an 8-weight system for customization, which is really great to see given the price point, although even with all the weights installed it still feels pretty light. While the Jet doesn't have Omron switches, the primary left and right clicks feel pretty good, with fairly responsive clicks. The mouse wheel is pretty unexceptional, with decent scroll steps, but overall smoothness isn't very good, and the middle click is just a little too tough to actuate for my preference. You also have the 2 side browser buttons, and on top is the DPI toggle. These can't be permanently remapped since there's no accommodating software, but they can still be modified in-game provided button remapping is supported. You can toggle between 1000, 1600 and 2000 DPI, but there isn't anything lower, which can be a deal breaker for FPS gamers. I personally play at 400 DPI in-game, so not being able to customize this is frustrating. On the bottom is our optical sensor, and we have a couple of tests for it. First up is the straight line test. To do this, we open up Photoshop and draw a straight line to test if the mouse has prediction. Naturally, I can't draw a perfect line, so if the mouse isn't altering it, we should see wiggles in this line. Looking at the Jet, we see it does have some prediction, creating a pretty straight line. This isn't necessarily bad, but we have to keep it in mind. It also doesn't have any acceleration as far as I can tell, something that's great to see. The last test is how the mouse handles fast movements, especially flicks in game. For this, I launched up CSGO and did a quick 180 turn. Ideally, it should track smoothly the entire way, but the Jet started very quickly, losing the tracking and not completing the turn. This is a big issue if you're an FPS gamer, as I found myself frustrated when not being able to turn quickly. For the record, this stuttering plagues many of the mice at the lower end of the market, so the Jet isn't unique in this respect. Next up is the Zalman M401R, which is actually the cheapest of the mice at only $13. The materials used here are actually quite good, the soft touch finish feels comforting and the build is amazingly decent. Quite the step up from the Rosewill with no sensor rattle. The Omron switches feel pretty good, and the scroll wheel is decent, but the middle click still requires too much force. The shape of the mouse is also quite weird, and I can't say I like it. It's too flat, and it doesn't support your hand very well, with this weird ridge at the back being not particularly comfortable. The side buttons are also a bit too small, and their click profile isn't very satisfying. Once again, there's no software, which means you can't rebind them permanently, and the M401R only has DPI selections of 1000, 1500, 2000, 2500, indicated by the LED color. These options are par for the course with the included Avago A5050 sensor, but they aren't really optimal for FPS gamers. Sensor performance isn't great either. It does alright in straight line tests with some prediction, but once again it falls apart in quick movements, just like the Jet. Jittery performance when performing flicks is once again a deal breaker for FPS gamers. Overall, the A5050 sensor isn't really optimal for gaming, and it's another mark off the M401R. The Gamidas Dementer is up now, priced at $15. The build of the Demeter is actually a step down from the Zalman, having a soft plastic finish with some slight texture on the side. It has a very heavy emphasis on plastic, and this results in pretty average build quality, with noticeable sensor rattle similar to the Rosewill Jet. The Gamidas is ambidextrous, with a single button on each side of the mouse. Both the primary mouse buttons and the scroll wheel are what I would call average. They're not bad, but aren't exceptional either. In many ways, this is pretty much expected for this price range, but it would have been nice to see something different. Where the Gamidas does step up is in the software, with a large amount of customization. You've got both DPI adjustment, polling rates, and key assignment, so you can reassign both the primary and secondary buttons. This is awesome. You can store 3 profiles on the mouse and toggle between them, and there's also mouse use stats. The software is pretty versatile and great to see. Taking a look at the sensor, and first up is the straight line test. There isn't too much prediction, and you can choose to have acceleration enabled or disabled, which is cool. However, like the rest of the mice so far, flicking issues plague this sensor. With fast movements it drops out and struggles, which is a shame because otherwise the mouse would have been one of the best in the price range. On that note, we come to the next in our list, the Gigabyte M6900, which is priced at $25, so it's on the high end of this price range, but it's a bit of an interesting mouse. If it wasn't marketed as a gaming peripheral, I would think this was a productivity focused mouse. Build quality is good, it's fairly heavy on plastic, but it feels solid with absolutely no sensor rattle. The design of the mouse though is quite unique, with a focus on ergonomics. It's a fairly large mouse, with large curves to fit naturally to the hand. I actually found it quite comfortable, and nice to use for long periods of time. The M6900 has a 4-way scroll wheel, something which isn't on any of the other mice. The wheel's feel is better than expected, with smooth but controlled scrolling. Meanwhile, the left and right buttons are average, but their actuation doesn't feel as satisfying and controlled as some of the other mice. The M6900 also has some basic accommodating software, and while it looks a bit outdated, it provides a wide range of functions. You can do basic button remapping and control DPI with profile assignments. There's nothing crazy unique here, but it covers all the necessary bases. Now with the sensor, it doesn't show too much prediction, but the big issue for gaming with this mouse is the acceleration. Right on Gigabyte's website, they advertise 30G of added acceleration. Acceleration means that you can't predict exactly where your cursor will go, and for a gaming mouse, this alone should put you off. However, it does hold up in the high-speed movement test, and overall accuracy isn't too bad. So if you're looking for a productivity mouse that does a bit of gaming and don't mind some acceleration, this might be a good choice, but otherwise you might want to look at other options. And the next option at number 5 on our list is the Cougar 200M. It's available for $17 and is notably built better than the previous offerings. The soft touch finish is extremely durable, and it's probably one of my favourite out of all of these mice. The shape is well thought out and will fit a large number of hand sizes. Even the switch actuation was on point with the left, right, and side buttons providing just the right amount of feedback. The scroll wheel is also really nice. It's perfectly placed and scrolling is satisfying and smooth, and the actuation force for the middle click is just right. It's a really impressive build for under $20, and the only thing letting it down is some moderate sensor rattle. The main reason that this isn't higher on the list is because of the sensor. Firstly, the minimum DPI is only 800, with 1600 and 2000 increments available as well. The lowest setting is better than some of the other mice in this roundup, but there isn't any custom DPI or software-based key remapping, which is a shame. Onto sensor performance, and the 200M also has a lot of sensor prediction, as shown here, but luckily no acceleration. Unfortunately, it also has issues with flicks, and can't handle faster movements, which is super unfortunate and unwanted in a gaming mouse. The design of the 200M is good, but it's let down by the sensor. And the story is similar for the 4th on our list, the Azio GM2400. Priced at $16, this shares a lot of similarities with the Cougar 200M. It's built well, with a very nice soft touch finish and solid material choices, and it features outstanding build quality at the price. It's also very comfortable, fitting my hand well, with some of the best comfort of any of these mice. It does exhibit some sensor rattle, but it's not too bad. I'm not sure about the blue and black core choice, but otherwise it's fine. Moving on to the buttons themselves, the scroll wheel takes too much force to actuate for me, but otherwise it's fairly decent, and the primary mouse buttons use Omron switches and provide very good feedback. The sensor only has limited DPIs once again, with 800, 1200, 1600 and 2400 DPI. The GM2400 does fine on straight line tests, and it doesn't have any acceleration. Once again though, the issue arises with flicking, with higher acceleration scenarios having the same issue as other mice, dropping out and not working at higher speeds. This really is the same story as the 200M, as it has a nice body and a very comfortable design, but the sensor just isn't quite up to par. Taking in the spot at number 3 on this list is the $20 Logitech G100s. In many ways, it's the opposite to the last two mice, placing a good sensor and simple design first. The build is pretty unexceptional. It's primarily plastic, and honestly most of the other mice have a more premium build, although there is very little sensor rattle. It's not bad for comfort, it's a little small for my hands, but the curve feels natural and there isn't anything that sticks out uncomfortably. In many ways, this is a very neutral design that's meant to appeal to as broad a market as possible. The primary clicks are alright, but it's not using Omron switches, which results in a slightly less pronounced feedback, and my unit even has a bit of squeak on the right click. The mouse wheel feels okay, but it's also a bit cheap. You don't have any side buttons, something which I think should have been there, as even on a gaming mouse it's nice to have those buttons for things like microphone push to talk. The build and feature set seems pretty unimpressive, so why is this in third place? In short, the sensor. Firstly, you get DPI adjustment as well as some key remapping with Logitech's intuitive software, allowing more customization than the other mice. The G100s does well in the range of tests, with good results on the straight line test, no acceleration, and most importantly, no issues with flicking or high speed movements. Unlike almost all of the mice below it, you can accurately flick away with the G100s, and this consistent sensor performance alone scores at third place. If you're looking for build, features, and a better all-round mouse, this might not be for you, but its simplicity and core features gets it third place. The runner-up spot goes to the Azio EX01, coming in at $25, and while it's right at our maximum price point, prices tend to fluctuate. It's still the most expensive mouse here though. The EX01 has similar design cues as the G100s, and also the more expensive SteelSeries Sensei with a rounded design. There's an aluminium style plastic finish on the top, and textured rubber on the sides, both of which contribute to a high-end look and feel which seems to work well. You can still feel some of the cheaper plastics used, but overall the build is pretty satisfactory for the price, and most importantly, you don't get any sensor rattle in this mouse. Actually using the EX01 is interesting, since it features both positive and negative points. The primary clicks are pretty good, but don't have the same level of actuation as some of the other mice. For me, they're just slightly too hard to press, making them not quite feel as responsive. Scrolling is pretty good, with good scroll steps, although middle clicking is just a touch too tough again. The side buttons are well placed and clicky, but there isn't any software once again, and they can't be remapped natively. Like other mice, this lack of software means you're stuck with the profiles, and this is one of the biggest downsides of this mouse, as 1250 DPI is the minimum, with 2000, 2750 and 3500 options available. If there was a 400 DPI option, this would have made this mouse much more compelling for FPS gamers, but it is workable nonetheless. Sensor performance is also very good. It does fine in the straight line test and no acceleration is present. And very importantly for FPS gamers, flicking is completely fluid. You can easily move this mouse quickly, and through my use I didn't find any tracking issues with this sensor. If you're a fan of this mouse design and can live with the higher DPI, then this will probably be the best mouse on the list for you, and it's deserving of second place. And finally, taking the winning spot is the Thermaltake Talon Blue. Coming in at $20, its price is in the middle of the pack, but it offers quite a lot of value for that money. You can check out the full review here, but let's take a look at the build and design first. The soft touch finish is well done, although a little prone to fingerprints, and all the materials feel quite well chosen. It's a little light, but overall feels well built and pretty solid. The shape is comfortable, although the edges are a little bit hard for me, and I prefer the more rounded and curved design of the Cougar 200M and Azio GM2400. In terms of those all-important buttons, scrolling is smooth, the middle click is a little tough but still acceptable. Meanwhile, the side browser buttons are nearly perfect, and the primary on-run switches are very good with excellent responsiveness. You can even remove the sides to reveal a different material, although with those removed, I found the edges a little too sharp and a bit uncomfortable, so I kept them on. The build quality seems to be very good, well above its price point. So far there doesn't seem to be any major flaws, so what about the features and the sensor? The Talon Blue once again doesn't have any software, and relies on profiles. Luckily, it has a better DPI range than anything else here, with a minimum of 500 DPI, as well as 750, 1500, 2500, and 3000 DPI. While specific software-based customization is the best, this is about as good as you'll get for onboard profiles. You can't rebind any buttons on the mouse, but that's not a deal breaker. Thermaltake lists the sensor loud and proud on their website, as the Talon uses an Avago 3050 sensor, which is spec'd very well for the price. Tracking has been great, prediction seems fine, and there isn't any acceleration. It has a max speed of 3.4 meters a second at 500 DPI, meaning flicking comes naturally, with no loss of tracking even at much higher speeds. This sensor seems to hold up really well, and there's not much to complain about at all. The Thermaltake Talon is the most complete package here, with great comfort, design, build, and a great sensor. It seems to do everything well, with very few flaws, though it would have been nice to have a software package. So let's sum all of this info up. Is it possible to get a decent gaming mouse for less than half the price of today's marketed alternatives? Absolutely. Some of the mice in this roundup blew my expectations out of the water. Others just don't make sense to purchase when there are better options available. The main thing you need to know is that any mouse in the sub $25 price bracket will sacrifice somewhere, be it build quality, features, sensor selection, customizability, or a combination of all of these aspects. Don't expect miracles. By tempering expectations, there are certainly some standouts in this roundup. The Azio EX01 may have a different design, but its sensor, comfort, features, and build quality make it a great choice, although keep in mind that minimum DPI is 1250. Meanwhile, honourable mentions also go to the Gigabyte M6900 for a unique design, and the Logitech G100s for being a simple, refined edition that has access to an excellent software suite. But the winner? Without a doubt, the Thermaltake Talon. For about $20, it offers great build quality, comfortable design, good customization, and very importantly, a superb sensor. It's an all-round package, without any major flaws. I'm taking it with me to the next round to compete against mice in the $25 to $50 category. So that concludes this roundup. Make sure to leave a like and let us know what you think of the roundup results in the comments below. I'm Aiden with Hardware Canucks, make sure to subscribe for the next roundup, and we'll see you in the next one.